I watched a fish explode. Literally, the stuff contacted the water. The fish exploded. I'm not joking. It literally blew up.
How did it do it? Can you explain a little bit more?
I have no idea what caused it, but the fish, they were running a test that had a fish in it, and the fish spasmed and made a kind of a crescent shape, and then its guts exploded.
Oh wow! Now that is scary.
And they wanted to dump that. They wanted to dump that in the ocean.
Well, it's no worse than what's going to happen with Japan here in the near future. They don't know what to do with all this irradiated wastewater from the reactors now because they don't know where they can't store it forever. Because they're constantly having to keep it cool, so they're dumping water on it. So their feeling is they need to dump it out on the Pacific Ocean. We're already seeing, fish that has, it's irradiated already off the Washington, Oregon coast. That's the one most. I don't know.
But you have to remember you have a kind of reaction on a fuel rod. Just dumping it in the ocean is not going to make it better. It's going to keep heating up.
No, that means they just get more water and start the same cycle again, and then eventually dump it back into the ocean. And the ocean's to the point where the ocean can't take much more.
Really, the only thing you can do is something like what they did in Chernobyl, just encase it.
Yeah, and that's
what they did at Chernobyl.
Isn't that only though? Hey, we're getting a lot of static here, but isn't that too?
Oh, sorry, okay. How's that?
That's better. But even like what they did in Russia, that's only a temporary fix for so many years.
Sure.
And then what are they going to do at that point? That thing is still going towards where.
But that's the problem. That's the problem with nuclear energy. Back in the 70s and the 60s and the 70s, when we started to figure out how to build, fairly inexpensive reactors, we were like, hey, it's like free energy. And they go out and build a bunch of this stuff. But the only solution they ever came up with was to put it all in Yucca Mountain.
Yeah.
It's not like you have a permanent fix. It's like you're moving the problem.
Well, the other issue I have right now, and then we'll start talking about disclosure and UFOs and stuff like that.
Sure.
I'm not a huge fan of the wall. I know we need to repair some places where we have the wall up. The barriers, I can see that, or some type of thing. But before, I can't understand how these politicians don't have their brains in the right place because, I am so concerned. We have our president, and no offense, I voted for Trump. I'll admit it to people. But the thing is, that he keeps worrying about all these criminals coming into the United States, murderers, criminals, drug, pushers, all this stuff, right? But what's going to happen if we get hit with a solar flare or worse, okay, from like China or Russia and do what's going to happen to our grid system? And we're talking about $6.5 billion to build a wall and for $3.6 billion we can fix our grid system. If we get hit by a solar flare, we're not going to lose our grid system.
My attitude about that is when people ask me about my opinion about the wall, I always point out, Area 51 doesn't have a wall. You can't get 6 inches into that place without the camo dudes being on top of you. So whatever they're doing at Area 51 would probably be more effective.
Well, look at the guy back here, about 3-4 weeks ago that had an object and went into Area 51, and look what happened to him. It didn't take long.
No, you can't barely get into that place before they're on you.
Yeah.
And that's because they have ammonia detectors and seismic sensors.
Yeah,
and all kinds of stuff that way more efficient. I get, I'm like everybody else in the US. I want to secure the border and stop bad people from coming in and, not have drugs and all that other stuff, but it's like you have to take a long look at it and take a rational appraisal to it. The Romans, they built a wall called Hadrian's Wall to keep the Picts out and keep the Scots out, and they, it didn't work. long term. The only wall that was ever effective, I would imagine, is probably the Great Wall of China, because it was manned.
Yeah, but that's still what I read. Wasn't very effective either, because a lot of
you just go around it.
Yeah, they went around it, or they bribed and came through.
Well, one of the things you have to remember, right, and this is my favorite example of walls that don't work, is the Maginot Line. The French had built the Maginot Line, pointing at Germany, saying, okay, you can't invade us now because we have this massive frontier of fortresses, and they're all pointing at you. And so what did the Germans do? The Germans went around it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when I was a kid, I read The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And to paraphrase one of the teachings was that when you come across a problem, right, and he used a mountain as an example, you can go around it, you can go over it, or you can go through it. But you still have to end up on the other side of it. So, you know, if you have somebody who's intent on crossing the frontier, they're going to find a way. In fact, drug dealers have found some very sophisticated ways. There was a case where a cartel paid a German mining engineering firm to design a tunnel to go under it. And they spent millions of dollars to build this very sophisticated tunnel, you know, designed by a German mining engineering firm to go under the frontier. And it's like, you can put whatever you want on the surface. They bored under it. So, you know, it's one of those things where you really have to take an appraisal. I'm not opposed necessarily to, you know, trying to secure our borders. I think that's a good idea. But, you know, you have to be realistic about what's effective and efficient. And I just am not sold that a 1,000-mile long chain link fence or a chain link fence with intervals of concrete is going to really do the trick. They'll fly over it. They'll go around it. They'll go
underneath it.
Yeah. You can't. That's where a seismic sensor comes in really handy, because if you dot that whole place with seismic sensors, you can detect people walking across it. You can detect cars driving across it. You can detect people tunneling under it. You know, you can detect all these things. And ammonia detectors, you know, you can't. That's what they use at Area 51. And you cannot evade an ammonia detector, because what people don't realize is that your body puts off a certain amount of ammonia, and they have very sensitive detectors that can actually sniff the ammonia. The only way to bypass it is to seal yourself in some sort of like a space suit or like a neoprene suit or something that's airtight to hold the smell in. But it's just absurd. But it's the government, right? They don't. You know, sometimes they do things that are strange, and they do things, you know, they used to call it pork barrel stuff, that, you know, they do things to line the pockets of their friends. And I think that's one of the things as citizens of our beautiful country. You know, we have to look at the people that we vote for, on the left, on the right, in the middle, it doesn't matter. You have to look at them and say, you know what, are you really there for public service? Or are you there for a really awesome retirement and to make a lot of money?
Well, I think you
and
just hit it right there.
That's true of the Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, everybody else. They're all in it.
Yeah, you I think you nailed it right there, the last two things you said. But, you know, again, I really think we should be doing something about our grid system, because if our president is so worried about crime coming over, you know, when we had our snowstorm here, okay, I sent my wife to the major stores, Albertsons, Safeway, and Fred Meyer's, to buy food, because I figured, hey, we're going to be snowed in for, I didn't realize that long, but I told her to go buy food. You know, so about an hour and a half later, she goes to the store, and the store is all sold out of meat. They're all sold out of bread. They're all sold out of water. They're all sold out of, you know, whatever, because people were panicking. Now, if something went down with our grid system, you know what? Some people were saying, you know, all 3 days worth of food in the grocery store. No way. You're talking a matter of hours.
Well, you know what I had some friends once upon a time who were of the survivalist nature, and they, you know, the thing that they would always say is that you're 3 days away from total societal breakdown. That if the masses of people can't get food or water for 3 days, because, you can survive for 3 days without water. And it's like if you're not getting water for 3 days, you're going to get desperate.
Oh yeah.
So there are a lot of things like that I think we really, we need to sit down as a country and say, what's really the priority here? And I think the grid system is priority number one. And I think the quality of our roads is number two. Our roads and our rail systems. The Europeans, they use their rail systems extensively, and they seem to do okay with it. So maybe we should really take a look at our rail networks and start to really revisit that.
Well, we need to do something too. Even like, our roadways, our bridges, how many of them are unsafe? And I'm talking about really unsafe. If we had a minor earthquake, it could collapse at any time.
I live in earthquake country. I know all about it. I was here in '89 when the Cypress structure collapsed. And the good thing is that we had this really ugly freeway that ran along the waterfront in San Francisco, and it collapsed and got all tore up. So the Embarcadero, so they tore it down, which was fantastic. But, I was watching the news live when the part of the Bay Bridge collapsed, and that person in the car tried to run it, and they went down, and, it was not good.
No.
But I live in earthquake country. I can tell you all about it.
Yeah. And you're actually ready for a big one at any time, too.
Yeah, that's what they tell us.
Yeah.
I mean, if you live anywhere in California and you don't have at least a week's worth of food, you're just
well,
you got to rethink. You got to rethink it.
I would, like me, I normally stock at least 3 weeks worth of, canned goods and stuff. Maybe stuff that, I wouldn't want to really eat, but I mean, it's there if I have to. And I keep, because I don't know well system, but, without electricity, how am I going to get water? You can't turn your faucet on. Nobody's going to get water. So I keep a 100-gallon, drum of water, and I drain it once a month and put fresh water in it just in case, something happens. And occasionally our power goes out and then we don't have water. There I go in and tap into it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I mean, this isn't like building a bunker in your backyard or anything. I mean, this is just stuff that you should do, because the one thing, that you can't be assured of is anybody's coming to help you. So you got to be able to take care of yourself.
Oh, yeah. Now, I was talking to Steve Bassett here lately. He's been on my show a few times. He doesn't think real disclosure is going to happen soon. He thinks maybe another year or two out. But, talking to a lot of people that, are really into the UFO community, I mean, big time, they're telling me, it's a matter of a couple of weeks. Have you been hearing any rumors? What's going on?
I'll tell you, I stopped tracking that a long time ago because it goes up and it goes down. I remember, a TV show would come on and then everybody would go, well, that's predictive programming. We're going to get a disclosure any minute. And it's like, we're still waiting. I think I'm in the minority, but I'm of the opinion that disclosure will never happen. I don't think it will ever occur, because I think there's too much to lose. And I think what you may get is pockets of it where they say, okay, well, kind of a la Project Blue Book. Okay, well, I can't explain that thing, but I don't think that we'll ever get full blown disclosure ever. At least not in my lifetime.
Yeah,
I don't think it'll happen.
I think also there's a lot of people out there, they're feeding disclosure like mad right now. And I wouldn't trust what comes out either as being
no.
Yeah, I mean that's,
well, look at it this way, right? That let's say theoretically, right, that in 1947 that a UFO crashed. I would argue to you that it was probably not a UFO, being of alien origin. But let's just say for the sake of argument that Roswell was a UFO and there were alien bodies and we recovered them. If you go out and you do disclosure and you say, okay, UFOs are real, you've got 70 years now of stuff that you have to answer for. You're now looking at 70 years of covering, 72 years of covering stuff up and you're going to have to justify that.